savta shiur. So this is the fourth time I'm doing it, but it's been 5 years since I started doing the annual, what we now call the savta shiur, because it's a yahrzeit shiur dedicated in memory of 4 special savtas. My grandmother, Minette Schwartz Radin Kochman, Lillian Klaff, Sadie Jaffe, and Yolanda Rosenschein. And we're going to speak a little bit about each one of these 4 special women to dedicate the shiur to them. So first of all, first is my grandmother, Minette Schwartz Radin Kochman. Her 10th yahrzeit is coming up on Tu B'Shvat on Wednesday night and Thursday. She was the daughter of Louis and Bertha Schwartz. I have wonderful, wonderful memories of my savta. I can't believe that it's been 10 years since she left us. And I mean, a lot of you knew her. She really was a woman with so much energy, and she had lots of different interests, and she loved to travel, and she loved her children and her grandchildren, and really was just a woman who enjoyed life and enjoyed being a good friend. I'm looking at this picture and know that she's sitting next to her very good friend in Israel, Ethel Schiffman, and I just have lots of wonderful memories of her. So I'm happy to dedicate this shiur in her memory. Okay, now Debbie.
And she made beautiful clothes.
She did. She made beautiful, beautiful clothing.
And she had special break the fast after Yom Kippur.
Oh, okay.
What was that? What did she make, Ima?
There was so much food. I don't remember. Very hospitable. So, okay, my mother, Lillian Klaff, was born in Durham, North Carolina, and she was always known as the Southern Belle. But I must say, after living in
Danville, we can't see your mouth.
Oh,
there.
Need to see my mouth?
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, and after living in Danville, and after we made Aliyah, she joined us when she was 75, and everybody thought it was such a big deal making Aliyah at 75, and that's my age now. So I can relate to how hard it was to make changes, but she chose to be with her only child and grandchildren, and we were so happy. And it was true. They said when there's a savta in the house, there's a bracha in the house, and we really felt it. My grandmother, like Sadie Jaffe, whose yahrzeit was Rosh Chodesh, Shvat, so she lived with us. So we were used to having a savta in the house. And also she had 7 children. My mother was the middle, but my mother was the only religious kosher one. So that's had something to do with them living with us. And we were very lucky. So what can I say, Baruch Hashem?
And now my grandmother-in-law, so my father-in-law, Bob Rosenschein, will say something.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Yedida. And thank you for doing this. What a mitzvah. Mom was a people person. She just liked people. She was very warm and friendly. She was also a big optimist. She believed in life goes on, we do the best we can, and she didn't get down in the dumps very easily. I personally saw her restart life several times, but none of those compared to what she went through, in World War II. She was born in Munkach. She lost almost all of her family in Auschwitz. She was sent to a concentration camp, a place called Weisswasser, and ended up in the harshest of all of them in Bergen-Belsen, where she was liberated from Bergen-Belsen 80 years ago, this April 15th, 80 years. And she once told me that the very hardest thing she ever witnessed with her own eyes were just piles of bodies unburied in Bergen-Belsen. So having seen this, I went back today and I decided to look for a picture. Let's see if we can see this. I'm going to try it. This is a picture of Mom. One of the first pictures taken. I don't know if you can see it.
Turn your camera a little bit to the right.
Can you see that at all?
Well, you have to turn it around.
Oh, I'm trying to turn this. You can't see my camera?
There, Net, that's great.
Oh, good. So it's an interesting picture of Mom because it was taken in 1945, and there's clearly a sadness in her eyes. And she was 24 at the time. She I think what's going on in Israel today with the tragedy of the hostages coming out in such terrible shape gave me new appreciation for her state of mind in 1945. So I didn't really appreciate it growing up. I was just a little kid. So I didn't really know what she had gone through, much less understand it. But she was a happy, upbeat, optimistic person all her life. She didn't even understand people who were not upbeat. And it's just interesting. And this is a picture much later of her in life. I don't know if you can see it there. This is with her gerontologist. Her doctor, she was already in an old age home last few months of her life. And she couldn't see very well, but she liked to hold people's hands anyway. It was like this electrical connection with other people. And they responded to it too because they really felt her warmth. But she taught us a lot about how to cope, how to get up on your feet, how to start again, and how to look forward and to love your family, which she loved passionately. And that's pretty much what I want to say, unless Jeff wants to add something.
Thank you. Thank you. And Bob, thank you for reminding me that in addition to dedicating this shiur in memory of these 4 women, I would also like to dedicate this shiur for the return of all the hostages and the recovery of everyone that's been wounded in the war, and the return of all the people to their homes in the South and the North. Okay, so tonight we're going to learn about the Aseret HaDibrot. I chose this topic for a couple of reasons. One, it's Parshat Shavua. On Shabbat, we're going to read Parshat Yitro, which the highlight of the Parsha is the Aseret HaDibrot. Also, as I mentioned, it's my grandmother's 10th yortzeit. So there's 10 Dibrot, 10 years. It really kind of echoed for me. So for those reasons, I wanted to explore a little bit about the Aseret HaDibrot. We're not going to actually talk about the content so much as the Aseret HaDibrot as some sort of concept, as a fundamental concept in Judaism. And we're going to look at it from a couple of different perspectives. So I'm going to share this again. If you look in the chat, you'll see a link to a Sefaria source sheet. And I'm also going to open it on my screen. First, though, I'm going to give, for some of you who have been in my shiurim before, you know that I love Sefaria, and you probably know what it is. For other people that are a little bit less familiar, I'm going to do a quick rundown of what Sefaria is and how to use it, because they've added so many great things to the site. So let's see. So first I wanted to show Sefaria, for those of you that don't know, is an online Jewish library. It has actually, one more thing. It's sefaria.org. And you can see a living library of Torah. And it's divided into all these different areas of Torah: Tanakh, Mishnah, Talmud, Midrash, Halakha, Kabbalah, liturgy, Jewish thought, Tosefta, Hasidut, lots and lots of things. They've added a really interesting thing called stories. These are only available in English. And so when I looked up, like in the search feature, if you look up any kind of topic, so you can find sources about that topic, but you can also, if you happen to be a topic that's a story, like when I looked up the 10 Commandments, they have this great page that explains what the 10 Commandments are. It has all kinds of notable sources from the different areas that I showed you. So if you're interested in something in particular, you can see, like in this search box, when I look up 10 Commandments, you can see on the side that there's a topic of 10 Commandments. There's also a topic of the 10th of Tevet. So it's a great way to start looking at different things that you're interested in. Okay, so I made my own source sheet about the 10 Commandments. I don't want to see that on the side. Hang on a second. Okay, so another great thing that they've added to the source sheets is that I can show the source, just the translation, or the source with the translation. So when I'm showing everybody, I'll show both things. If you just want to look at the English, you can have just the English or just the Hebrew. Okay, so actually we're going to start. So I said this idea of 10 really kind of grabbed me. And I remembered the Mishnah in Masechet Avot begins with a lot of 10s. The first Mishnah says, Ba'asara ma'amarot nivra ha'olam. The world was created with 10 sayings. Like in Sefer Breshit, it says the word vayivra 10 times. And the Mishnah goes on to say, God could have created the world with just one saying. He could have just said something and the whole world would have been created. Why do we need 10 sayings? So because it's worse, it makes it worse for the evil people. We punish them more because they are destroy a world that was created with 10 utterances. And it also gives more reward to righteous people because they're upholding a world that was created with these 10 utterances. So 10 is like a number of greatness and a number of that we think of it as a what's it called? A significant number. So what's interesting, I didn't quote the rest of the Mishnayot. There's another 3 Mishnayot in the first parak of Masechet Avot, of Pirkei Avot, and it lists all kinds of other 10s. Like if I opened this up to discussion, I'm sure you guys could give me different other 10s, like the 10 plagues and the 10 tests of Abraham and the 10 tests of Bnei Israel. What is the one thing that is not listed in Pirkei Avot? It says nothing about the 10 Commandments. All these 10s and the 10 Commandments are not listed. So it got me thinking, how do we know that there are 10 Commandments? I mean, it's something that is so basic to our thought, but are there really 10 of them? And how do we know that? So actually, luckily for us, there is a pasuk, not in the story in Yitro of when we have of when the 10 Commandments are given, but later in Shmot Lamed Daled, prior, like in the story of the Chet HaEgel, when it's describing what happened when Moshe actually went up to the on Har Sinai, it says, this is source number 2, Vayhi Sham im Hashem, 40 yom ו40 לילה, לחם לא אכל ומים לא שתה, ויכתוב על הלוחות את דברי הברית Aseret HaDvarim. Sorry, so this is after Moshe broke the tablets. He came down, he broke the tablets, he went back up to Har Sinai and created the second set of tablets, and what was written on them? The 10 things. The 10, so we translate it as 10 commandments. They're 10 sayings. So these 10 things were written on the Luchot Habrit. Right, okay. So so we okay. So when also when we read the 10 Commandments, there's something very interesting. So I'm actually reading the 10 Commandments this Shabbat in Shul. And when we read the 10 Commandments, there's actually two ways of reading. Oh, did I want to get there first? Sorry, we'll go in order of the source sheet. We'll get there in a minute. So when we read in the Torah in general, the Gemara in source number 4, the Gemara says in Masechet Megillah, Haditani Reb Shimi, Ein pochatin me'asara psukin bevet hakneset. You're never allowed to read, when you read in public in Beit Knesset, you're not allowed to read fewer than 10 psukim. And it also adds Vayidaber Oleh min haminyan, a pasuk that starts Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe, like the pasuk that precedes the Aseret HaDibrot. That's what I quoted in source number 3. Vayidaber Elokim et kol hadvarim ha'ele lemor. So a pasuk like that counts as one of the 10. And it's interesting why the Gemara feels the need to say that pasuk counts. We'll kind of get back to that in a minute. But first, the Gemara asks, Hani asara keneged mi. These 10 psukim. Why do we have 10 psukim? Like I said, 10 is our wonderful typical number or significant number. But why 10 when we have 10 psukim? So Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi keneged asara batlanim shebebeit hakneset. There's a concept that we see a lot in Talmud called the asara batlanim. 10 people that they don't have a job. They just stay in the Beit Knesset all day and learn and pray. And that's actually something that that defines a large city. Because if your city is large enough that you can have 10 people that all they do is sit in the Beit Knesset all day, that's considered a large city. Anywhere that doesn't have enough people to be able to support that is not a large city. And that actually comes into play with things like Megillah, where you read Megillah on what day and things like that. But anyway, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says these 10 psukim are keneged the 10 people that sit in the Beit Knesset. Maybe you would think that there's like a pasuk per person, even though we always have 3 olim that go to the Torah. Anyway, that's not what's important for us. Rav Yosef Amar keneged Aseret HaDibrot shene'emru leMoshe b'Sinai. So Rav Yosef's opinion is that these 10 psukim that you have to read in like a typical Torah reading is the Aseret HaDibrot, keneged Aseret HaDibrot. And we're not going to read the last opinion of Rabbi Yochanan says keneged asara ma'amarot shenivra bahem holam, the same 10 ma'amarot that we saw that the world was created with them, so that's also 10. So I was thinking, why would 10, besides the fact that 10 is this significant number that we talked about, what is there about the Aseret HaDibrot as they're written that lends itself to 10 psukim being read in Beit HaKnesset? So I don't know how many of you have looked in a Sefer Torah, but in a Sefer Torah, we don't actually have divisions into psukim. This is how the Aseret HaDibrot look inside a Sefer Torah. You can see I took it from a Wikipedia page, so I'm giving the attribution to whoever took this picture from the inside of a Sefer Torah. But this is what it looks like. And the spaces that you see here are not necessarily psukim. The spaces are called parshiot. And the parshiot are an older division than the division into psukim. And that is what's written in the Klaff of a Sefer Torah. So if we look at the divisions just of the parshiot, you can see Anochi. So I said Vayidaber Elokim et kol hadvarim ha'ele lemor. So we know that that's one pasuk, and that's the introduction to the Aseret HaDibrot. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's actually, I kind of fudged it because there are 10 spaces that space these into 10 commandments. But I'm skipping down the source sheet because I already want to show you the difference. I mentioned, so this is a little bit harder to see. I mentioned that there's 2 ways of reading the Aseret HaDibrot. There's what's called the Tam Tachton, which divides the Aseret HaDibrot into psukim. So in Parshat Yitro, when we have the Aseret HaDibrot, it's actually divided into 13 psukim. And then we have something that's called the Tam Elyon, which makes each commandment an actual one pasuk. So what's interesting to think about in the Gemara, when it says that there's 10, that you have to read a minimum of 10 psukim in the Torah, it could possibly be referring to the Tam Elyon, where each of the Aseret HaDibrot is its own pasuk, even though that's not actually the division into psukim. Now I'll go back to what I wanted to say before. So, okay. So it's also interesting to think about it that when we actually heard the Aseret, why are the Aseret HaDibrot so important to us? Because there's something that we heard from God. We all gathered there at Har Sinai and heard these words directly from Hashem. And that's what Rashi says on that pasuk before the Aseret HaDibrot. So this is source number 5. Et kol hadvarim ha'eleh melamed she'amar hakadosh baruch hu Aseret HaDibrot b'dibur echad ma she'i efshar la'adam lomar ken. So Rashi's concept is that Hashem actually said all 10 commandments at once. And it wasn't necessarily something that we could even receive or that we could comprehend. We somehow received all 10 of the commandments in one go, but we didn't really understand what was going on. So then, so after that initial burst of giving over all 10 commandments at once, so then God went back and explained, like in words, that these are the 10 commandments. So when it says kol hadvarim ha'eleh, God actually said all 10 things at the same time. And that's what gives the Aseret HaDibrot kind of a higher standing than anything else, because this is the part of Torah that we all received directly from God. The end of the Rashi is shechazar v'peiresh al kol dibur v'dibur b'fnei atzmo. That so he explained afterwards. Each dibur was explained on its own. Now was right. So let me skip this one and go. So there's another. You may have heard this midrash that I'm gonna bring in source 7. That really, what happened at Har Sinai was that God spoke the first 2 dibrot directly to Bnei Israel. And after, so we'll read inside what actually happened. So this is a Gemara in Shabbat, Peichet Amud Bet. V'amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, kol dibur v'dibur sheyatza mipi hakadosh baruch hu, yatzta nishmatan shel Yisrael. If God spoke one of the dibrot, and then everybody died. Their souls left them. Shene'emar nafshi yatza b'dabro. Again, it's using this word dibur, and the dibur refers to the dibrot. So that's a quote from Shir Hashirim, but they're hinting that the nishamot of Bnei Israel left them. ומאחר שמדיבור ראשון יצא נשמתן, דיבור שני היאך קיבלו. If they died after the first one, how could they receive the second dibur? So what happened? הוריד טל שעתיד להחיות בו מתים והחיה אותם. There's this dew that in the future is going to revive all the dead. So God used that dew to revive the entire people after the first dibur, and they woke back up. How do we know this? שנאמר, גשם נדבות תניף אלוהים נחלתך ונראה אתה כוננת. This is a source from Psalms. You, God, poured down a bountiful rain when your inheritance was weary and you sustained it. So that's hinting to this Jew. And then, okay, there's another midrash. Hold on a second. I can't, I'm gonna stop. Oh, here we go. Hang on. I'm gonna mute everything. Okay, so and because of this very intense experience, the Bnei Israel couldn't take it. They only managed to go through this for 2 dibrot, because this is in source 6. We have a hint of this actually in the psukim themselves, because Bnei Israel say to Moshe, ויאמרו אל משה, דבר אתה עמנו ונשמע, ואל ידבר עמנו אלוהים פן נמות. Don't let God speak to us because we might die. So that's also kind of the source for this midrash, that God speaking to them was really just too much for them, and they couldn't take it. So they wanted Moshe to speak to them. So why is all this related to these dibrot? Because when I explained, I don't know if you could see from the chart, you can go back and look at the chart, but in the Tam Elyon, the first and second dibrot are actually together. We don't separate them into two dibrot, even though we're dividing the idea of the Tam Elyon is to divide them into their dibrot. The first and second are put together. I also found an interesting article by Rav Yair Khan, who says, so the first dibra, Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Hotzeticha me'eretz Mitzrayim, which there's a lot of discussion that we're not going to, if we were going really in depth into the content of the dibrot, we talk about it more. But what is there really a commandment in the first commandment? But basically, it's about the absolute existence of God. And the second commandment, Lo yeh lecha Elohim achirim al panai, is a negation of the existence of everything else besides God. So since the first 2 commandments, it's not only that they were the ones that we heard directly from God and were explained directly by God, but they're really the basis of all faith, of all that our faith is based on the fact that we have one God and no other besides him. So when I mentioned that we have these 2 ways of reading the Aseret HaDibrot, how does this come into play? So this source is from the Pninei Halacha, who's Rav Eliezer Melamed. He's still alive. He's the Rav in Har Bracha, and he writes very basic halacha svarim. So when he's explaining the reading of Shavuot, he says, Nahagu likro et Aseret HaDibrot shebechag HaShavuot b'tam elyon. כלומר, בקריאה לפי הטעמים הרגילים שכתובים בחומשים, חלוקה נגינת הקריאה היא לפי הפסוקים, ובטעם עליון חלוקת הנגינה לפי המצוות. So that's what I explained before, that the טעם עליון is according to the mitzvot. And we read that on Shavuot that way. Everybody agrees that you read with the טעם עליון, like with the mitzvot, on Shavuot. And he gives examples of how this works. Okay. What else do I say? Okay. And so later down in the source, he says, "L'chol hadeot korim b'chag haShavuot et Aseret HaDibrot b'tam elyon. Ulam legabe kriyat Aseret HaDibrot b'seder parshiot haShavua nechlaku haminhagim. So everyone agrees that on Shavuot you read according to the Tam Elyon, but there's a difference of opinion when you read it in Parshat Shavuot, like this week. How do you read it? And he says, "V'chayom noagim b'chol kriya b'tzibur likro et Aseret HaDibrot b'Tam Elyon." So according to Rav Melamed, nowadays everybody reads Tam Elyon in all public Torah readings. It's not everybody. I was reading an article by Rav Mordechai Breuer who says that clearly all Ashkenazim read Tam Elyon only on Shavuot, and in Yitro and Vet Hanan, they in Dvarim they read the Tam Tachton. Sfaradim and Nusach Sfard, like all the Hasidim, read Tam Elyon whenever there's a public Torah reading. And I really think now also Rav Melamed is writing later than Rav Breuer. I think that the trend has been that in all public Torah readings, we read with the Tam Elyon. And it's a question, why, like, what's the difference? And I really think that the Tam Elyon is supposed to reflect more the atmosphere of Matan Torah, because we heard things as the Dibrot. Like, we didn't hear psukim. We heard, like, this is what you have to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So it wasn't clear that these are different psukim. The psukim came later when Moshe sat down and said, okay, we're writing the Torah. Maybe even later than Moshe, I said, when you see in the Torah itself, you don't see a division into psukim. So this idea of reading according to the mitzvot, it's more reflective of Ma'amad Har Sinai, and that's also, I think I brought this. Sorry. The continuation in source number 12 of the Pnimei Halacha is the other question about the public reading of the Aseret HaDibrot. Do you stand during the Aseret HaDibrot? That's also another discussion. So it is a custom in most places. This is what he says: Rabim nohagim la'amod be'et kriyat Aseret HaDibrot zecher lema'amad hanichbad v'hanora. So remembering this incredible experience, this awesome experience of Ma'amad Har Sinai, we stand, because we're kind of doing a mini Har Sinai experience in Shul. Shekol hashomea et Aseret HaDibrot b'tzibur ki'ilu mekabel pnei shchina. It's as if we're having revelation right there when we're hearing the Aseret HaDibrot. Minhag ze nizkar l'rishona b'tkufat harishonim לפני כ-800 שנה, אולם רק בתקופת האחרונים נעשה רווח ברוב קהילות ישראל. So it was something that started about 800 years ago in several places, but only recently became widespread. כך נוהגים כל האשכנזים וחלק מהספרדים. So this is interesting, that the Ashkenazim dafka were the ones that adopted this custom first, and later the Sfaradim. But he's still talking about Shavuot. So it's possible that it's only that the Ashkenazim were very into this reenactment for Shavuot. So they read Tam Elyon and stood for the Aseret HaDibrot dafka on Shavuot, but not necessarily when it's just Parshat Shavuot. And okay, we're going to come back to this because I wanted to get something else. Okay, this source. Oh, this I was just, if you're interested, like when we know about ta'amim from and when we know about psukim, there's another Gemara in Megillah that says, where do we know the Targum from? The Targum shel Torah, Unklus Hager Amaro, like was Unklus the first one to translate Torah? V'ha Amar Rav Ika bar Abin, Amar Rav Hananel, Amar Rav, my dikti. They quote a pasuk from Ezra, who was in Bayit Sheni, and the pasuk from Ezra says, "V'yikra'u b'sefer Torah Elohim miforash v'som sechel v'yavinu b'mikra." So the pasuk itself means, and they read in the book the Torah of God distinctly, and they gave the sense, and they caused them to understand the reading. So now the Gemara is going to explain each of those words, what it's referring to. So Vayikru b'Sefer Torah Elohim ze mikra. So Sefer Torah Elohim, that's the text of the Torah. Miforash ze targum. So the Gemara is using this to say that even in the time of Ezra, they knew about the targum. V'som sechel elu hapsukim. So the sense, to make sense of something, you need the division into the psukim. V'yavinu b'mikra elu piskei ta'amim. So to understand the reading, but is referring to ta'amim the amri la elu hamasorot. So there's two different things. There's ta'amim or misorot, but we're gonna focus on the ta'amim here. So for our purposes, this Gemara is saying that the ta'amim were known in the time of Ezra. Rashi says, Piskei ha-ta'amim ha-neginot huyin ta'amim. So the actual ta'amim that we have in our, like in a Tikkun Korim today, it's a Masoretic text that we have the tradition from Anshe Tveria, which are actually, I think, 7th century. But it's possible, like according to the Gemara, that there were some sort of ta'amim even in the time of Ezra. So it's a very, very old tradition. And what I think is so incredible about it is that this is real Torah Shebaal Peh, because it's something that we express verbally. It's how we read it in public. And it's also something that's really not written down for a very, very long time, but definitely existed. So it's this sense of really taking the whole revelatory experience at Sinai and taking it with us throughout the generation. Okay. So on the flip side, why might this be dangerous, or why is there some objection? Why wouldn't you always read with the Tam Elyon, or why can't every day be a Sinai experience? So that's what the Rav Melamed refers to here. So there it is. Okay. So back in the source where he was talking about standing, he's like, well, why wouldn't everybody stand during Aseret HaDibrot? V'yesh shepikutku al haminhag mipnei shematzinu b'talmud. And we're going to look at this Gemara inside. Shenimneu chachamim milikboa et kriyat Aseret HaDibrot yachad im kriyat Shema kedei shelo yit'u achar haminim shetoanim she'efshar lehistapek b'shmirat Aseret HaDibrot. So we're going to read the Gemara in a minute and see exactly what it's talking about. But there was a movement to make Aseret HaDibrot like Kriyat Shema, something that should be done daily. And Chachamim were uncomfortable with it because they were afraid that people would say, well, maybe you only have to keep these 10 commandments. So there, on the one hand, the 10 commandments are foundational and they're very important. But on the other hand, they're only 10, and that's not the whole Torah. And we shouldn't do things to make it seem like these are the most important or the only important things. So let's look at those Gemara and get closer. So actually, the background for this, so we're on source number 13. The background for this is a Mishnah in Tamid. You might think that, I mean, mostly we've always heard that davening started after the destruction of the temple. But actually, there was a type of davening that happened in the temple itself. And that's what's explained in this Mishnah in the 5th parak of Tamid. So the Masechet Tamid describes how the daily offering was happened in the Beit HaMikdash. And here in the Gemara in Tamid Lamed Bet Amud Bet, it quotes the Mishnah that says, Amar lahem hamimuneh, the person in charge said, he was instructing the Kohanim in the Mikdash what they need to do now. He said, okay, now you do this, and now you do this, and now you do this. So he says, Barchu bracha achat, v'hem barchu. So say the first bracha, they said it. Kar'u Aseret HaDibrot. He says, read the Aseret HaDibrot. And they did. Shema. And they did. V'hayim shama vayomer. Berchu et ha'am shalosh brachot. Emet vayatziv ve'avodah ve'birkat kohanim. So this was their prayer in the Mikdash after, as part of bringing the Tamid offering, like interspersed with the actions of bringing the Tamid, they would read various passages. And one of the passages was the Aseret HaDibrot, and another passage was Shema v'hayim shema and vayomer. So then when we get to the Gemara in Brachot, so now this is the Gemara Brachot Yud Bet Amud Aleph. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Ach Biglulin Bikshu Likrot Ken. So the Gemara in Brachot quoted the Mishnah in Tamid and said this is what they did in the Mikdash. And then Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says that even outside of the Mikdash they wanted to do this. They wanted to say the Aseret HaDibrot. Ela shekvar bitlum mipnei taromet haminin. And then it continues in a lot of places. There's a lot of traditions that they wanted to say the Aseret HaDibrot as either before Kriyat Shema, after Kriyat Shema, or in the same kind of part of Tefillah in the same way. And they stopped it because of taromet haminin. So Rashi in source number 15, in 15 he says bikshu. So what did they want to do? Likboa Aseret HaDibrot bikriyat Shema. So as part of Kriyat Shema, instead of having just the 3 sections of Kriyat Shema, you would have had a 4th section, which would have been the Aseret HaDibrot. And he says they didn't do it. Mipnei taromet haminin. Shelo yomru la'amei Yisrael. The heretics shouldn't say to Israel, En shar Torah emet. So the rest of the Torah is not true. V'teidu she'en korin ela ma she'amar Kadosh Baruch Hu v'sham'u mipiv b'Sinai. And you should know that you're only reading what was heard, what was said by God on Sinai. So God only said those 10 things and nothing else. And that's what we want to shy away from. So for a very long time, the Chachamim downplayed the importance of the Aseret HaDibrot because they wanted to say that the rest of Torah is just as important and has the same status. And I think that those are 2 things that we really have to hold both things. And I found this very interesting Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, which is based on the same Mishnayot as the Babylonian Talmud. Normally, when we say the Gemara, we're quoting the Babylonian Talmud. The Jerusalem Talmud is more difficult because it's written in much terser language, and I really don't know how to navigate my way around it. But thanks to Sefaria, I found this very interesting quote, and it's talking about the same thing, talking about Kriyat Shema. And I just thought this was fascinating. It says, "Mipnei ma korin shtei parshiot halalu b'chol yom." Why do we read these 2 parshiot of Shema every day? Rabbi Simon Amar, mipnei shekatuv behen shchiva v'kima. Okay, so he says because it says in Shema v'shachtacha u'kumecha. So when you lie down and when you get up. So that's Rabbi Simon. Rabbi Levi Amar, mipnei she'aseret hadibrot klulin behen. So actually, the 10 commandments are included in the Shema. How are they included? So now we're actually going to go through all 10 commandments. It says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, and that's equivalent to Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu. Lo yiyeh lecha Elohim acherim al panai. Don't have other gods besides me. So that's the same as Hashem Echad. God is one God. Lo tisa et shem Hashem Elokecha leshav. The 3rd commandment is don't take Hashem's name in vain. So that is included in V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. Love God. If you love God, you don't take his name in vain. Oh, it says actually, it's explained this. Man dirachi malka lo lishtaba b'shmei u'mishaker. One who loves the king won't take his name in vain and lie. The fourth commandment, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho, keep Shabbat. So that is the words in Shema of Lima'an Tizkaru. So Zachor. Rivi Omer, Zo mitzvat Shabbat, shehi shkula keneged kol mitzvotea shel Torah, dichtiv ve'et Shabbat kodshecha hodata lahem, umitzvot v'chukim v'torah tzivita. V'chulei lehodiacha, shehi shkula keneged mitzvotea shel Torah. So, who was this? Ribi goes on to say that the mitzvah of Shabbat is actually equivalent to all the mitzvot of the Torah. Beseder, but Zachor Tzizkor. Then the fifth commandment, Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, that goes with the words of Shema, Lema'an yirbu yimechem yimei v'nechem, that you and your children should have long life. Then the sixth commandment, Lo tirtzach, don't murder. So that's included in Va'avadatem mehera. Why? Man dekatil miktel. So one who kills will be killed. So since in Shema it says you'll be lost quickly, that means you will be killed if you killed other people. The seventh commandment, Lo tin'ah, don't commit adultery. That goes with the words of Shema, Lo toturu acharei levavchem va'acharei einechem. Amar Rabbi Levi, liba ve'ena, train sirsure dechata aktiv, tana bani libcha li ve'enecha drachai totzarna. So Rabbi Levi said, heart and eye are the two agents of sin, because it's written in Mishlei, my son, give me your heart, your eyes should watch my ways. Okay, so we did, that was Lo tin'ah. All right, we're on number 8. Lo tignov, don't steal. So in Shema it says, V'asafta digancha v'lo dganot shel chavero. You should gather your produce and not the produce of your friends, so no steal. 9th commandment, Lo ta'aneh b'reacha ed shaker, don't bear false witness. Goes with Ani Hashem Elokechem. Oh, Ktiv v'Hashem Elokim emet, because God is truth. So truth, no falsehood. Mahu emet, Amar Rabbi Abun, Shehu Elohim Chaim u'Melech Olam. So this God is the source of truth. Amar Rabbi Levi, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Im he'adita lechaverach edut sheker, ma'ale ani alecha ki'ilu he'adita alai shelo barati shamayim ba'aretz. If you bear false witness against your fellow, it's like you're witnessing for me, like you testify about me that I didn't create the world. Okay, the last commandment, Lo tachmod beit re'echa. In Shema it says, Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, your house, beitecha v'lo beit chavera. So you have to, the mezuzah is on your house and not the house of your friend. So that is, don't covet. So I just found it so interesting that even though, like, clearly the Yerushalmi is coming from the same tradition that the 10 commandments should be set, are equivalent with the Shema. And for reasons of not wanting to glorify the 10 commandments to the exclusion of other mitzvot, they're dropped from daily practice. But we still have a remembrance of this daily practice within the Shema that we keep with us every day. So
Hello? Can't hear you.
Oh, so I can't hear you, Yedida.
yeah, you should stand for the entire aliyah, for the, oh no.
We missed what you said in the past like half a minute or so.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back, sorry. Don't know what happened. So I got to the end of the Shema, right? Okay. So I was saying that when you're in Shul the Shabbat, pay attention to how they read that Aseret HaDibrot. If it's the Tam Elyon or the Tam Tachton, if people stand up. I was saying that I think nowadays pretty much everybody stands up, but you might notice that some people stand for the entire Aliyah, because that's a way of saying that we're not raising up specifically the Aseret HaDibrot. We're giving kavod to the Aseret HaDibrot, but we're also standing for, some people in general stand for all of Torah reading. So if you stand for the whole Aliyah of the Aseret HaDibrot, it's not saying specifically the Aseret HaDibrot, but it's still kind of a special thing. And I think there is something about a public Torah reading and reminding ourselves of this status of revelation. And I was thinking to myself that maybe in past generations, it was enough to do it once a year on Shavuot, that Shavuot, you made a big deal of reenacting the Aseret HaDibrot. But for us, we could add 2 more times a year and it wouldn't hurt anything. Because I think it's good to be reminded of where our Torah comes from, what's the basis of our faith, and all of that. So are there any questions? Unmute people. Any questions? Comment?
I have a comment, but I'll try to keep it very quick.
Sure.
People, I grew up learning that the last 5 of the Dibrot are more focused on Ben Adam L'Chavero, and the first 5 more Ben Adam L'Makom. Even though one could argue with Kabet Avicha V'Timecha where it belongs. But my theory is very simple. The last 5 commandments are an increasing difficulty. It's very simplistic, but killing another person, that shouldn't be too hard to resist. Right. Committing adultery also should be reasonable. When it comes to stealing, well, it's very, very tempting. Little things, might be a paperclip or, a pencil from the office, but not everybody has been innocent all their lives of stealing anything or time. When it comes to lying, look, Rashi says that Aharon Cohen would sometimes lie to 2 people who were fighting so that he can make peace. But lying is something that nearly everybody does at some point. But the hardest one, the last one is the hardest one, lo tachmod, because it's actually impossible. It's so impossible that I'm not even sure whether it's a commandment of action or of thought, but it's simply superhuman to never envy anything, nothing. Right. So I think it's just an interesting progression of the Ben Adam L'Chavero things.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you, Yedida. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yedida.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks
This kiddo is fault.
for that.
And we're 10 people on the call.
Great.
Wait, 10 windows on the call.
Very
Not 10
good.
people.
That's cool.
That's very cool.
Thanks for letting me come on.
Oh yeah, thank you, Cheryl. It's good to see you.
Debbie mentioned it, and I said, "Oh, I love hearing the Yedida. Can I come?"